discoveries were taken on in Uganda. Now, lots of questions that do come through. How will the Ugandans benefit? How about the Ugandan companies? Issues about the environment, issues of job creation, and a lot more continue to stream in. And tonight on SpotLightUG, we seek to clear the air on these and many more aspects. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to SpotLightUG. It is SpotLightUG. I'm your host, Mildred Tuhaisa. Thank you so much for joining us here on NBS Television, broadcasting to you live from the Next Conference Center, Plot 13, Nagoro Summit View. But we are also live on Uganda Broadcasting Corporation, UBC TV, Inspiring Uganda, and tonight and the subsequent episodes, of course, powered by the Ministry of Information Communication Technology, ICT, and National Guidance, ensuring that we get to understand what the different ministries, departments, and agencies are all about at the end of the day, because it is the taxpayers' money that enables the functionality of many of this. And like I said much earlier on, our focus tonight is going to be on the oil and gas sector. Seemingly technical, but definitely tonight we'll be breaking it down. And without wasting any more time, let me reveal to you who our panelists tonight will be, starting with
Robert Kasande is the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, a ministry in which he has worked for the last 33 years. Starting out as a geologist, he raced through the ranks to become the Commissioner for the Midstream Petroleum Department, responsible for refineries and pipelines development. Before that, he served as an Assistant Commissioner in charge of geology. During that tenure, he played a leading role in the exploration and discovery of oil. For that achievement, he got a Presidential Award in 2006. He has also obtained a Presidential Medal for distinguished service to his country. Kasande holds a Master of Science in Petroleum Geophysics from Texas A&M University, USA. He also obtained various postgraduate diplomas in management, economics, and petroleum technology.
And welcome, Mr. Robert Kasande. You can say hello to our viewers.
Thank you. Good evening, viewers.
It's a pleasure having you and for sparing time off this night, and we know that it's going to be a fruitful discussion. Next on the panel is
Ernest Rubondo was appointed the first Executive Director of the Petroleum Authority of Uganda in September 2016, having served in the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development in various leadership positions. He is a trained geologist with 30 years of experience in the oil and gas industry. He is a member of the Uganda government team that promotes the country's petroleum potential and leads negotiations with oil companies. He chaired the working group that coordinated the formulation of a draft national oil and gas policy for Uganda 2008, and was a key participant in the formulation of Uganda's petroleum laws passed in 2013. Ernest Rubondo was the 2019 chairman of the Board of Society of Petroleum Engineers in Uganda and is a member of the American Association of Petroleum Geologists, AAPG, and the Geological Society of Uganda, as well as a recipient of various awards of recognition.
Of how everyone is going to be coming through in the oil and gas sector, but also ensuring that there is fairness in getting these opportunities. Mr. Ernest Rubondo, it's a pleasure having you. Say hello to our viewers.
Thank you, Mildred. Good evening, viewers.
Good evening to you. We'll continue with the discussion. Let's get to know who our next panelist tonight is.
Proscovia Nabanja is the Chief Executive Officer at the Uganda National Oil Company. Proscovia served as the Chief Operating Officer upstream of the Uganda National Oil Company before taking up the CEO position. She is a geologist by profession and formerly served as the Principal Geologist in the Petroleum Exploration and Production Department under the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. She also headed the Technical Division and was at the forefront of reviews of technical proposals, especially field development plans and petroleum reservoir reports. Ms. Nabanja has 19 years of experience in the oil and gas gas industry and headed the estimation and reporting of the oil resources and reserves in the country, field operations monitoring, and management of petroleum data. She has sat on several interministerial committees and worked on several donor-funded programs. Puskovia holds a Bachelor of Science, Chemistry, Geology from Makerere University, Master of Science, Petroleum Geoscience from the Imperial College of Science, Technology and Medicine, DIC, Diploma in Petroleum Management and Operations, as well as an MBA from the Imperial College Business School.
We are delighted to have Ms. Proskovia Nabanja with us at the NCC. Say hello to our viewers.
Thank you, Mildred. Good evening, our viewers.
A pleasure having you, and I know after 19 years and still counting of experience in the oil sector, it's going to be a fruitful discussion. And last but not least on our panel is
Honorable Dr. Eli Karuhanga, PhD, is the Council Chairman, Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum, and Chairman of the Private Sector Foundation, Uganda. Honorable Karuhanga is one of the founding partners of Kampala Associated Advocates, KAA, and has worked in a diplomatic capacity as Honorary Consul General of the Republic of Seychelles to Uganda since 2005, is a former Member of Parliament of Uganda, and the Director and Legal Counsel, Uganda Region at IBI Corp. Honorable Karuhanga is also a former President and Director of Hodman Petroleum Resources, which discovered oil in Uganda in 2006. He was the President and Director of Tullow Uganda Operations Pty Limited and the Senior Advisor Africa for Tullow Oil. He has also served and still serves on the boards of many companies in Uganda. Honorable Dr. Eli Karuhanga will be part of the panel as Uganda's oil and gas sector takes center stage.
And of course, we are as well delighted to have Honorable Dr. Eli Karuhanga not with us physically at the next conference center, but because of technology, we are definitely connected with him. Dr. Eli Karuhanga, very good evening to you. Say hello to our viewers.
Thank you, Mildred. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, we'll definitely be coming back to you. It's also a pleasure having you right about now. And like I said much earlier on, the discussion is live on NBS television and UBC TV, Inspiring Uganda. The hashtag to follow up in case you have any questions, but also to follow up on the discussion is SpotLightUG. We are delighted to have you. And of course, straight away, let's begin off with the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. Speaking to you, the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Robert Kasande. When people talk about the oil and gas sector, it's complex, I would say. There is a lot of information that people seek to understand, a lot of technicalities that are as well coming through. But would you kindly describe to us the framework of the oil and gas sector and how the different entities and players fit in?
Thank you, Mildred. The oil and gas sector, in addition to the supreme law of the land, the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, is largely managed by the Oil and Gas Policy of 2008, whose goal is to use the oil and gas resources to contribute to early achievement of poverty eradication and create lasting value to society. That's a policy that has worked very well for us, although currently we are revising and reviewing it to ensure that we bring on board the changes that are coming globally in terms of renewable energy. We're also looking to review it to bring on board the downstream part of the sector. Nonetheless, we did in 2013, we followed it up with the attendant laws, is what we call the Upstream Law, Exploration, Development and Production Act of 2013, and then the Midstream Law, which talks about midstream storage, refining and processing. We've also done a lot of regulations that focus on local content, health and safety, security and environment, licensing and so forth. With that legal regime, we have also, we agreed at that time when we did the policy in 2008, that we will put together a framework that will separate the roles. At that time, everything that had to do with this sector was being done by the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. Whether it was licensing, whether it was promotion, whether it was monitoring and regulation, or the business aspects for that matter. So we agreed that we will, for good management, we will separate the roles into three, largely. The ministry will ensure that there is policy, there are laws, there is exploration, there is promotion of the industry, and general regulation of the industry. Yeah. And then we also put together the Petroleum Authority of Uganda, which is mainly to regulate, to monitor, and ensure that whatever laws we have put in place are being followed. Then the third one is the national company, Uganda National Company, which ensures that the business aspects of the industry are made. We ensure that if we're going to invest, whether it is in the upstream, whether it is in the midstream, it will be the Uganda National Company. We don't stop there and work with only those three. We've worked very closely with other sister ministries, in particular the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Lands, because we've got to acquire land for wherever we are working. We've worked very well with the Ministry of Water and Environment, NEMA, our chief host, the Uganda Wildlife Authority, and we'll be maybe expounding more on that, why we call them our landlords, to name but a few. So that's largely the structure that we are working with to ensure that these resources are managed well, to be able to ensure that the goal that we set to achieve in the policy will be attained. Okay,
maybe Piers, just before we move on, we recently saw a signing of the 3 oil agreements, including Total being available, Sinop being available, and the 2 presidents of the Republic of Tanzania and Uganda. And many Ugandans are asking, what are these agreements and what are they about? What's their significance with regard to Uganda's journey to becoming one of the oil-producing countries?
Yeah, thank you very much. The agreements that we signed on the 11th, on Sunday, in Intermission, were those agreements that were culminating to us making a decision to move forward and develop these resources. The first one that we signed was the host government agreement. That was between the government of Uganda, who will be the landlord for that matter, or where the pipeline will be passing, with the pipeline company. The pipeline company has Total in it, has UNOC, has Sinop in it, and then the Tanzania Petroleum Development Corporation that represents the United Republic of Tanzania. Largely, that host government agreement discusses or agrees on how the pipeline will be developed. Issues of immigration of the workers, security of the pipeline, and so forth. The second one was the shareholders agreement that brings together whoever is investing in the pipeline. It was very critical that was agreed, because then we see that the financing of this pipeline is now going to happen. The third one is what we call the tariff and transportation agreement that was signed between everyone who is going to have crude oil flowing through the pipeline and the pipeline company that is developing it. So those were the key agreements that were signed. Having signed them, the criticality or the importance of this milestone was that now we start to invest. An agreement has been reached that the companies now can start issuing contracts to whoever is going to be developing these assets. Not only the pipeline assets, but also the upstream assets for the production of the crude oil.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We'll definitely be getting back more into the aspects of maybe the status of the projects, including the refinery itself. But let me move on to the Petroleum Authority. Mr. Ernest Rubondo, looking at an authority that was created about 5 years ago as a regulator, and Ugandans are asking, how much have you delivered? How far have you delivered with regard to your mandate? Because some Ugandans may think that your mandate will start when we start, getting the oil out of the ground.
Thank you, Mildred. It's very exciting to represent the Petroleum Authority of Uganda at this engagement. The Petroleum Authority of Uganda has been in place for 5 years. And the first 5 years of the authority have been quite challenging, but I must say very interesting at the same time. They've been challenging because the authority has been built from scratch, and during this time it was being built, it also had to carry out the very significant role of monitoring and regulating Uganda's oil and gas sector. That's the challenge. It's also very interesting because of the opportunity the authority, I must say opportunity and privilege the authority has had to support, contribute, and participate in the development of this significant and important sector. The Petroleum Authority of Uganda carries out its regulatory function through 7 areas. And over the last 5 years, these are the areas that it has focused on. I must also say that there are aspects of governance for the sector, which I think because of the time and I don't think the viewers want to hear a lot of that. But the governance of the Petroleum Authority is in place. We have a board, we have strategic plans, and so on and so on. But I just wanted to emphasize that our work is carried out through 7 areas. And these 7 areas, I can see them on the screen, are resource management, commercialization, safety and environment management, cost management, and economic analysis. Management of petroleum data, and national content monitoring, and then finally stakeholder engagement. I'm sorry it's a mouthful, but at least you can see it on the screen very clearly. And if you will allow me, I would like to spend a minute or two in each, very briefly. Resource management, what does the authority do on resource management? The authority works with the licensed oil companies to study the petroleum fields which have been discovered in Uganda. And the reason for this study is to establish the country's petroleum resource volumes and to ensure the optimal recovery of these resources. So we need to know where the resources are, how deep they are, what methods are used to extract as much as possible. And in line with this requirement, the authority has compiled and submitted to the minister the country's annual resource reports, a statement of what the resources are in the country every year, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020. This is a requirement of the law, and the authority has been able to do that. Now, the authority also evaluates the development proposals of the licensed oil companies. And these proposals have aspects like the amount of oil to be produced, the techniques to be used to produce the oil, the number of wells to be drilled, among others. And the authority has to approve these proposals. Now, this enables the achievement of optimal field development planning and implementation of efficient production strategies. So the authority is ensuring that Uganda's oil and gas resources are known and that the plans to produce them are efficient and effective. The development strategy, which has been agreed now, is to produce the recoverable just over 1 billion barrels of crude oil from 2 production projects, the Tilenga project and the Kingfisher project. And this 1 billion barrels of oil is supposed to be produced over the next 25 years. Now, there are 13 fields which have been lined up for this production. And at the first oil, which is expected at the beginning of 2025, 7 oil fields will be prepared to deliver this oil. And the other 6 fields are expected to come on 5 years later. And the maximum production we expect is about 230 million barrels of oil per day, with about 190,000 barrels coming from the Tilenga project and about 40,000 coming from the Kingfisher project. So that's what resource management is about. The authority needs to ensure that these aspects are in place. The second aspect is the commercialization. Once you produce the oil, you must make money out of it. And the government and the oil companies agreed on a commercialization plan for these resources. And this plan had a pipeline, export pipeline, and it also had a refinery of 60,000 barrels of oil per day. These are the two avenues for commercializing Uganda's oil. Now, regarding the pipeline, the authority has approved the route of the pipeline.
Okay.
It has approved the design of the pipeline, that is the East African crude oil pipeline, and these approvals were done towards the end of last year. Now, for the refinery, the government, of course, went into an agreement with the AGRC, a company. AGRC is the Albert and Graben refinery, to prepare for the development of this refinery. This agreement was in April 2018. Of course, this agreement provides for studies like definition of configuration, the designs, and the environmental assessments. And these activities are being taken forward. The configuration was concluded and agreed. The designs and environment and social impact assessments are ongoing, and we expect that these will be concluded before the end of this year. The authority regulates these activities for both the pipeline and the refinery. The third area of regulation is environment, health, and security. This is a very important aspect. The authority works very closely with licensed companies and other government and non-government partners to ensure that environmental protection, safety of the communities, safety of the workers, and safety of the investments are well handled, and we are required to do this. The designs of all the oil and gas facilities that are coming, and I'm sure will be described later, must integrate all these aspects of safety and environment. So during the planning and designing phase, the authority ensures that international oil companies adopt technology which avoids pollution of the environment and minimizes the footprint of petroleum operations. For instance, the Tilenga and Kingfisher developments will utilize multiple drilling from a single well pad, and they will share some facilities in order to minimize the footprint in the field. Of course, these issues are followed through the entire life cycle of the project. That is through designing, construction, production, and decommissioning. The authority has to continue ensuring that these are done through those processes. Now, Uganda is privileged and proud because, unlike other countries where petroleum activities have been associated with significant environmental impacts, negative, and safety incidents, here in Uganda, the petroleum sector has instead made a significant contribution to environmental protection and biodiversity. Through capacity building of the relevant government institutions, through research, the companies do a lot of research which benefits the biodiversity aspects, and in support to environmental management initiatives. So there is a good working relationship between oil and gas and those environment. But in addition, the country has not had significant environmental safety incidents registered in the oil and gas sector since it began in 2000. This is a significant achievement. Okay. The fourth aspect, and I would really like you to allow me an additional minute, is cost management and economic analysis. This is a very important aspect because the costs being spent now will be recovered when the oil is produced. So the authority promotes and maintains an efficient cost environment, and it also undertakes economic analysis for the oil and gas projects. The authority is responsible for ensuring that the profitability of projects is maintained and that the government's stake from these oil and gas resources is not eroded at all during the process. It is agreed in the production sharing agreements, and we have to maintain that what was agreed is maintained. In cost management, the authority reviews and approves the licensee's annual budgets. The authority monitors the implementation of these budgets and the procurement processes, and the authority supports the Auditor General in auditing the actual expenditures. So the amount of money that has been invested in exploration and appraisal so far is about 3.8 billion, and this has discovered 6.5 billion barrels. And so you can see that this translates into a finding cost of oil in Uganda of less than $1 per barrel, if you can do the quick math. This is very impressive when you consider that the global average is over $5 per barrel, and Uganda has achieved less than $1 per barrel. Now, the cost of finding oil in Uganda is therefore among, if not the lowest in the world. This means that so far, the aspects of managing costs in the exploration and appraisal phase have been done very well in the country. The authority is now commencing to monitor the costs in the development phase, and we are determined to ensure that the costs in the development phase are also as favorable. We already have a good beginning because the estimated costs of developing Tilenga and Kingfisher are around $6 billion. The amount of oil that is going to be produced is 1 billion barrels. So we're already looking at $6 per barrel before you add on the transportation. And around the world, this is a very, very good percentage, cost of development.
Okay.
And so that's the aspect of costs. And of course, eventually, the authority will be responsible for ascertaining the cost of oil, which will be recovered by the licensees when production starts. That's the aspect of costs. The other aspect is, of course, management of petroleum data. This is a big responsibility which is given to the authority through the law. And I can just tell you that the data includes technical and administrative data, and it is used for different purposes: promotion and licensing, monitoring and regulation, resource assessment, revenue and tax calculations, research and development. So what the authority has achieved so far, it has set up a state-of-the-art data center. This data center is going to host data management systems and electronic data. This data center is the first phase of a national petroleum data repository. The National Petroleum Data Repository will also include a real-time monitoring center so that the authority will be able to monitor all the activities happening in the field in real time. The design of this real-time monitoring center is actually going on now. And in addition to this center, the authority is developing a geosample store and also a disaster recovery system for this data.
Okay.
National content is the other area that the authority regulates. The authority consistently promotes, monitors, and regulates the participation of Ugandans in the supply of goods and services to the oil and gas activities. And this is done with a view to create and retain value in the country. And I think I'll have an opportunity to say more about national content, so I will not say more about that.
Okay.
Finally, the area of stakeholder engagement. The authority has put in place a corporate communication strategy and plan. So the engagements under this strategy and plan have steered the relationship between the authority and its partners and stakeholders in the country's oil and gas sector. Effective communication of the developments in the sector is a critical factor for increasing transparency in the oil and gas industry, as stipulated in the National Oil and Gas Policy. This is implementing the policy. Over 100 engagements are held every year with communities in the oil and gas operation areas, with the media, and with civil society and other stakeholders. These engagements include field visits for members of the media, legislators, and other institutions. Now, through these engagements, the stakeholders have achieved a better appreciation of the sector, including the opportunities and challenges, together with the collaborative efforts which are required for the successful implementation of the oil and gas activities in the country. It's important to know that for the oil and gas sector to be successful, all the stakeholders have to play their part. If the authority does a very good job, and the national oil company does a good job, but the private sector doesn't do a good job, we will all not succeed.
True.
As they say, the strongest part of a chain is its weakest part. You are all as strong as your weakest member. So we need to work to bring ourselves up to... Of course, we also have, the authority also has digital platforms, website, and social media.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. And those are the areas the authority is handling. And those are the aspects that have been done so far. I am sorry if I took a minute longer, but...
Well, we definitely need to have this broken down and understood. Thank you. That was very elaborate. And when you talked about the cost of Uganda's refining, the cost of refining the oil being quite low, I know many Ugandans out there are waiting for that to be reflected on the price or at the fuel pumps. But let me come to you, Ms. Proskovia Nabanja. Looking at Uganda's commercial interests, and how is UNOC, the Uganda National Oil Company, dealing with these, securing the country's commercial interest? Because at the end of the day, we need to earn the money that is going to transform the country. And also, if you could briefly be able to let us in on an update on the financing status of the Uganda National Oil Company.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Mildred. And I'm happy to note that the previous speakers have set the scene. The National Oil Company was established under the Petroleum Act of 2013, and it was incorporated under the Companies Act of 2015. Our mandate is to manage the state's commercial interests in the oil and gas sector, and also develop in-depth expertise in the oil and gas sector. Of course, we have two subsidiaries by virtue of the way we are structured. One that manages the pipeline and the storage terminals and bulk trading business. That's the National Pipeline Company, and that's the one that signed the shareholders agreement on the 11th. And then we have another subsidiary, again 100% owned by UNOC, the Uganda Refinery Holding Company, that is responsible for the refining and the petrochemical side of business. As a national oil company, we also go out and seek new ventures in the upstream, in the midstream, in the downstream, and eventually we hope that if we start off locally, we should be able to make these investments internationally. Currently, we have a portfolio of about 8 different projects. Of course, the buzz has been on the Tilenga, the Kingfisher, and the East African Crude Oil Pipeline, but our portfolio stretches beyond that because we manage the commercial interest across the entire petroleum value chain. In the upstream, we have 2 projects. Number one, that is managing the 15% participating interest on behalf of the state for the Tilenga and Kingfisher projects. You've had the ED highlighting the fact that the developments are going to get us to first oil, but for each of those production licenses, government nominated the National Oil Company to step in and manage its commercial aspects for the Tilenga and Kingfisher. But of course, as a national oil company that has, a sustainability agenda and having investments in the East African Crude Oil Pipeline and the refinery project, we also have a strategic driver towards going out and seeking more resources through exploration, because the refinery and the East African Crude Oil Pipeline are dependent on feedstock anyway. So as a national oil company, it's only strategic that we also go and explore for new resources. So that's for the upstream. In the midstream, we have a participating interest of 40% in the refinery, which is supposed to process 60,000 barrels of oil per day. Of course, the aggregate production for the fields is going to be about 230,000 barrels of oil per day. So if you knock off 60,000, then the balance goes to the East African Crude Oil Pipeline. Okay. And we will be investing through our subsidiary, the Uganda Refinery Holding Company, at 40% within the SPV that will be created to run the refinery. For the East African Crude Oil Pipeline, again, we participate at 15% through one of our subsidiaries, the National Pipeline Company. You had the shareholders agreement being signed off. It's quite a capital-intensive project, and I'll touch on the numbers briefly. And we are anticipating that, of course, come 2024, end 2024, early 2025, we will be commercializing those resources and the resources hitting the international market. The other project that we are running as a national oil company is the storage terminal in Jinja. We have a 30 million capacity terminal in Jinja of both AGO and PMS, and we are in partnership with One Petroleum Limited, who are, who have established their presence in Uganda and also have presence in Kenya. So we are able to load products from Kenya into that terminal and trade it locally. But knowing that the terminal is only 30 million liters, our strategic objective is to set up another terminal in the suburbs of Kampala in an area called Namwambula. That terminal will be 320 million liters when at full capacity, but we are starting off from a phased approach with 138 million liters, and it's not yet built. We are almost concluding the identification of a strategic partner, and we are hopeful that by close of this year, we should have the strategic partner on board. The next project that we have is the Kabale Petro-based Industrial Park, and again, one of the key projects that will clearly show the linkages between the oil and gas sector and other sectors of the economy. It's an expanse of about 29 square kilometers in Hoima, in Buseruka. And this industrial park is really going to be petrol-based, housing industries that feed off the products of the refinery and also those that supply goods and services to the industry. And the last project we have is the one where we are trading in petroleum products. We launched the first cargo with our key customer, Starbucks. That was last year in the first quarter. And it's been quite an interesting journey for us because now we've tested the market, we know how to bring in products, we know how to distribute it locally, and we anticipate that it can even go to the forward markets. That is quite a mouthful of projects. And the question of how prepared or how is the financing for UNOC, we are lucky that the PSAs in a way cushion us in the upstream projects by virtue of the fact that they allow the state entity to be carried until commercial production. So we do not anticipate any cash calls prior to first oil. However, we need to be prepared. Of course, we have our plan on how to prepare ourselves to meet those cash calls that will come after commercialization or first oil. Now, for the other projects, of course, we've computed the numbers. The equity requirement is slightly under 1 billion across the different projects. Okay. For the East African crude oil pipeline, which is anticipated to cost anywhere close to 4 billion, currently the estimate is about 3.8 capital expenditure. If it's going to be, of course, it's going to be project financed at a debt to equity ratio of 60-40, which places our financing requirements to slightly about 300 million US dollars, including financing costs. Then the refinery, again, it's going to be project financed at 70-30. So if you imagine the refinery costing a total capital expenditure of about 4 billion, it places our equity requirements at about 480 million US dollars. The Kampala storage terminal, again, project figure is about 140 million, and our equity contribution will be 71.4, assuming we carry about 51% shareholding in the project. For bulk trading, of course, this will be buttressed using Jinja storage terminal in the beginning, and the estimated cost is about 16 to 18 million US dollars, 12 million to cater for the stocks, which we will purchase for trading, and then the 6 million to cater for upgrade of the infrastructure. And then the Kabale Petro-based Industrial Park, which we've started off by budgeting for opening up of the infrastructure, and the anticipated cost is about 19 million US dollars. Okay. So of course, when we look at these projects, they sound pretty capital intensive, which is okay for such nature of projects. But when we look at the returns for each of the projects, they sit anywhere between 15 to 24% internal rate of return. Now, with such a good internal rate of return, it only shows that as a business, we must invest in those projects. So we've also run the numbers and estimated that for every dollar we invest within the course of the projects or the timelines for the projects, we will be able to return $10. Wow. Now, of course, as you develop these projects, you also need to capacitate the institution to run the operations. So annually, our estimated requirements stand at about 129 billion Uganda shillings as an operational budget to facilitate the company to execute those projects. Now, of course, you've highlighted the question of how are we prepared, or how do we prepare ourselves for financing these projects. It's a subject of discussion, certainly, and we are working with Ministry of Finance. But I also want to note the fact that by virtue of the fact that we are in strategic partnerships, it automatically reduces your financing risk. Because imagine if UNOC was supposed to invest independently 15 to 20 billion, and you know that GDP for the country is slightly above 30. We will never be able to manage that.
True.
But because of the strategic partners, we reduce the financial risk through the different shareholding. We've also evaluated different options on how to raise that equity for sure, together with Ministry of Finance. And the options will depend on the type of project you're dealing with. If it's a quick project like trading in petroleum products, you could go out and seek a trade financing facility. Then for the projects that are under project financing, the ECOP and the refinery, we've looked at several proposals. Of course, you can consider programming it according to the usual budget process, which is so constraining. We've looked at export credit agencies. We've looked at bridge financing, infrastructure bonds. It's still an early conversation with Ministry of Finance, but at least we are trying to ensure that we have the monies at the required time.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, Ms. Proskovia. We will definitely be coming back to you. I want to engage private sector players. Of course, I will be talking to the council chairman of the Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum, and to you, Honorable Dr. Eli Karuhanga. Ms. Banja has been speaking to numbers, and what caught most my attention is the fact that there is return, that for every dollar that we are going to be investing, we will have a return of about $10 there. But the question that many Ugandans are asking is, how ready are the Ugandans and the businesses to compete for these contracts? In your view, what is your assessment?
Mildred, maybe before I answer that, I must say how privileged I am to share a platform with that team that is there. These are very unique Ugandans, and sharing a platform with them is a big privilege for me. I'm really humbled, and I thank you for inviting me to this show. Secondly, I want to thank NBS for this program, because last week I saw the program that you organized on corruption, and it was really captivating. The week before, you showed Ministry of Health and what they are doing for our health sector. That is really very good contribution. Now you have brought oil and gas on the spotlight, and I am sure that by the end of this show, we are all going to be the wiser, especially we in the private sector. The question you have asked me is, are we ready? The answer is yes. We are ready. We are as ready as we are unready, in equal measure. The truth of the matter is that we cannot be ready, but we are better off than we would have been if today was 10 years ago when the Chamber of Mines was started. We would not have been ready at all if we had started the stage where we are at that time. But because of the passage of time, we have some companies, some private sector companies have really become ready, and they are very ready. But very many are still wondering whether they are ready or not. We have tried our very best to make sure that Ugandan companies wake up. For the last 10 years, every year, we have an oil and gas conference, every year. We travel around the world attending conferences, inviting international companies to look at Uganda, concentrate on Uganda, and to see whether they can come to our country and help Ugandan companies to work with them to make them ready, because the standards required for oil companies are so high that Ugandan companies can only be ready if they meet those standards. So, in a way, we have reached a level where these conferences that you can see on the screen now that we have held over time have started bearing fruit. We have invited here President of South Africa with President Museveni, President of Equatorial Guinea, President of Kenya, President of Rwanda, President of Ethiopia, President of South Sudan, and very many others. We have invited international key players from all over the world, from Nigeria, from UK, from Norway, from India, from Britain, from France. Everybody who really would be useful to make our Ugandans ready has been here. We have held a lot of Zoom meetings since COVID with many of our private sector players, and we have tried our best to make them ready. However, I am happy to know that there are some companies who are so ready in Uganda that they will be able to meet the tenders that are required. I could mention a few of them, but it's not really necessary. What I am sure about is that there are companies who have helped us to train Ugandans, the medium, small-scale enterprises, and have trained them. A company like a bank like Stanbic Bank, which created an incubator program, has seen more than 1,000 Ugandans trained. Through them, they can now manage to compete, do tenders, answer those tenders, 40, 50 pages of required for tendering for oil and gas companies. So in a way, yes, we are there. Secondly, we have inculcated into the minds of Ugandans the need for meaningful partnerships over the years to increase their capacity so that they can be able to generate synergies, to be able to attack this big animal and put it down. And so in a way, yes, I am quite pleased with the goings on. I am very happy with PAO, because recently, they, apart from the job they do, and you've had Mr. Anis Rubondo here on the platform speak with a lot of authority and education, but they have produced a list of companies who have supplied oil and gas sector between 2017 and 2019, and over 80% of all Ugandans who participated have actually come up. The chamber has promoted local content and capacity building and made sure that Ugandans know what is required. We have also worked with the Ministry of Energy and with the Prime Minister's office, and private sector has worked with the Private Sector Foundation, has also worked with the Prime Minister, and we are writing MOUs. The logistics platform has entered an MOU with the Ministry of Works. We have signed an MOU recently with the Ministry of Energy as the Chamber of Mines, and we are pushing to make sure that the voice of private sector in oil and gas is listened to. And with these MOUs, we think that the government can now open a little bit of its secrecy. Government is always very secretive. They like to conclude their meetings with the independent oil companies like Total and Sinok in privacy. They don't obviously invite us to attend those meetings. We are always very anxious to know what goes on behind in Amber House and in State House. It's very difficult for them to invite us, but now we have signed MOUs with them. We think they can slowly, diplomatically start giving us a glimpse of what is being prepared, so that we can prepare ourselves to work with our Tanzanian comrades and Kenyan comrades who are also going to be participating in these ventures. Therefore, are we ready? Yes, we are ready. But are we unready? Yes, we are unready, because I would like to see many, many more companies in Uganda be ready to participate in oil and gas, because we do not understand that the required standards of oil and gas companies are so high. However, I want to thank our panelists, because soon, they will be able to show us. And by the end of this program, I am sure that, again, Ugandans who are not yet ready will wake up. But for us, we do what I call Gwanga Muje. We are always drumming and making an alarm, asking Ugandans to please participate. The wedding is coming soon, and I think you heard on Sunday, we are ready. And we are better off than we were before. So the delayed production, signing and starting of this oil, I think has made us better off than it would have been if we had started earlier. Answer is, Mildred, we are around, on the scale of 10, I think we are around 6 out of 10.
Little bit above average, so to say, but maybe in just a bit briefly, Honorable Eli Karanga, how can we bring on board the micro and the small and medium enterprises to level up and be able to compete for some of these, oil and gas contracts? What are the basics? What do they need to do? Just briefly.
As I said earlier, the sector is highly standardized. Their standards are international, world over. So we need to make sure that these standards are reached. What's still the biggest problem we have as a country is bulk supply for goods and services. Because when these contracts are given to you, they want you to supply, if it's eggs, they want you to supply many eggs every day. Because they have camps with 5,000 people in them, they must have breakfast, lunch, and supper. So this is a challenge. But this is not to scare medium, small, and micro, small, and medium enterprises. No, the challenge is for you to formalize your operations, to partner, to increase capacity, to embrace quality, and to understand what is required in health and safety methods on a day-to-day business, so that we can be able to move. We are looking at the magnitude of work. The capacity and capital requirements are very high. So the collective effort, which I keep on talking about for MSMEs, is to participate together. The minimum requirements that are specified by Petroleum Authority of Uganda through the mandatory registration of the National Suppliers Database is a requirement. Companies cannot enter into this business unless they are registered with PAO. So we keep on hammering it down their throat that they must register, because they can't just wake up and go and say, oh, I saw a tender in the newspapers, I'm just going to apply. So we need, the Chamber recently launched a self-assessment tool that is accessible to the web, on the web, to all our members on social platforms, and so that they can be able to understand what is required. We are working in partnership with the regulators, the PAO, with the local players, to meet industry requirements and take action on all these. The Chamber is organizing sector-based engagements through essential dissemination of ideas, and every time, you saw the other day we had 90 days of campaign on television, on NBS, every day, 90 days consistently, bringing people to educate our people to be able to participate in this. And as I said, I can't thank Stanbic Business Incubator Program. It really has helped SMEs. And so our small companies are really not going to be left behind. Then the Total and Sinok, I must thank them very much because they have held quarterly engagements with suppliers, and they tell the suppliers what is required. Now, for private sector foundation has intervened in a big way. And really, I'm privileged to be the chairman of Private Sector Foundation because what has actually happened in Private Sector Foundation is great, and I hope I'll get a chance to talk about it.
Of course.
Of supplying this work. Don't feel you are small. You are going to be happy, and it's going to transform your lives. But work and get professional advisors, get lawyers, get people to put you together, and let's see. You can't be left behind.
Very much, Honorable Dr. Eli Karhanga, for that. We will definitely be coming back to you to expound more. We should be taking a short break, and when we do return, issues of land and compensation still remain very key. The contracts that are coming through, how can you be a part of these? Issues of the environment still remain very, very key and outstanding with regard to the oil and gas sector in Uganda. That and much more when we do return from this short commercial break.
No one should stop you from finishing what's yours. That's why MTN gives you data bundles that don't expire. Load MTN Freedom Bundles using My MTN app and enjoy the freedom to finish your data bundles.
MTN.
Today tastes like a new tradition, like an old favorite. Tastes like all hands on deck and all eyes on the prize. Today tastes like a piece of the action, and it never tasted this good.
That's their way of stopping HIV. What about you?
2020 was the year the tourism sector got disconnected. But this year, we reconnect. To leads, growth, to industry experts, to wider markets, to untapped potential. Be part of the first ever virtual Pearl of Africa Tourism Expo and engage with industry experts from around the world. Find out how you can grow your leads, put your tourism business back on the map, and a whole lot more. Sign up for free at www.poate.co.ug/register and reconnect with your world. The Pearl of Africa Tourism Expo runs from the 27th to the 29th of April 2021 and is proudly brought to you by Uganda Tourism Board.
Today tastes like a new tradition, like an old favorite. tastes like all hands on deck and all eyes on the prize. Today tastes like a piece of the action. And it never tasted this good.
It's no secret that ICT makes learning easy.
The strides made in our field could not be possible without it.
And now we can watch our favorite show.
My radio is my best friend.
UCC provides an enabling regulatory environment and policy guidance for healthy competition. We also facilitate ease of doing business in the communications sector through licensing, standardization, spectrum management, tariff regulation, rural communication development, and consumer empowerment. An informed consumer is an empowered consumer. UCC supports local content and innovations. Driving the development of a robust communication sector in Uganda is Uganda Communications Commission.
Winston Churchill named it the Pearl of Africa. Uganda is probably one of the most gifted countries in the world. The people, the food, the love, the climate, the culture, the scenery, and the peace and tranquility. Join us as we take you through the journey. The journey, live and exclusive to UBC, your public broadcaster, inspiring Uganda.
It is intellectually engaging.
Court does not sit to waste its time. If you have no defense, it chases you.
It is a ruling on the foundations. Business has been conducted in a certain way.
Banks take money from us, depositors. All of us seated here have got money in the bank. And even before you walk out, they've given that money to somebody else.
Deeply incisive.
Here is a credible alternative political force.
Let's get into this election and let's choose right.
Through that vote that you will contribute towards building a new Uganda.
Authentically symbolic and insightful.
We should work.
SpotLightUG. SpotLightUG.
Technology, ICT and National Guidance Ministry, ensuring that Ugandans get to know what's happening with the different ministries, departments and agencies because they are powered by the taxpayers. And tonight, our focus is on the oil and gas sector, which seems complex, but we're breaking it down for the Ugandans to understand because they will be engaging in this and it is for the good of every one of us. What is very clear as yet is that each and every one of us has to come on board. We need to work together as a team. It is not only for government or the oil companies, but everyone is concerned with this. And coming through, let me come to you, PS, Mr. Robert Kasande. Looking at the government programs, now when we talk about national participation, many a times people look at enterprises and the different businesses engaged, but the biggest question Ugandans are asking, the jobs. Will we be able to get these jobs in the oil and gas sector as Ugandans? And they're asking which programs are government putting in place to ensure that the Ugandans who want these jobs can actually get them?
Yeah, thank you very much once again, Mildred. When we put together the oil and gas policy of 2008, we have 10 objectives in that policy, of which 2 speak to local content, if you will. And we focus very much on ensuring that Ugandans will participate. Like we said earlier, participation is through, supply of goods and services, but also there is the employment bit. And therefore, we've worked very hard to build the capacity of Ugandans. We started by looking at what are these jobs that we're looking at.
Okay.
We did a baseline survey that showed us that the industry will probably create about 160,000 jobs, of which 14,000 are direct jobs, about 45 are indirect jobs, and about 105,000 are induced jobs. What does that mean? You will have those people who, you have an engineer who is directly drilling a well, or a welder. That would be a direct job, somebody directly involved in the industry. But then you have people who have been tracking, for instance, bringing cement from wherever. They are indirectly now going to be a lot more of those that are coming into the industry to bring all these goods that are going to be coming in from the coast. So those are part of the 45,000 that would be indirect jobs. Then the induced, because we are saying that these resources should be invested in infrastructure development, in agriculture, there will be those who will be producing for the industry. And therefore, because of these camps that we've talked about and all these people that will be working in the industry, the need for more food, for instance, will be there. And the agricultural sector will improve in the Hoima region, in all these areas. So we're looking at this employment of Ugandans, not only the ones who will be working in the industry itself. Then, in order to ensure that these people really are participating, there are some interventions that we have in the regulations, in local content regulations, like enforcement of a succession plan. If I have an expatriate working for the industry and is going to be here 5 years, I would want to see that expatriate is being understudied by a Ugandan. So at the end of the 5 years, the expatriate could be leaving, and then we have Ugandans who have built capacity. Okay. Similarly, what UNOC will be building, the capacity that UNOC will be building. Then in 2018, we put together what we call the local content policy that seeks to ensure that Ugandans are employed. We have been training Ugandans to ensure that this happens, albeit not the numbers that we would wish to see, but substantial numbers have been trained. We're talking about 24,000 Ugandans trained in various fields, welding, pipe fitting, scaffolding, rigging. These are the trades that really are hands-on in this industry. Of those, already, because we trained them, been training them for about 4 or 5 years now. Some of them are already in employment, not only in Uganda, but in various countries in the world. And we believe that these can now come back when we eventually start to do this work here in Uganda. In the industry, there is what we call certification and accreditation. You need that the people you've trained are certified, that they have the right skills of the industry. And therefore, we have set up some of the institutions in Uganda to accredit these trained Ugandans. We started with Kigumba Petroleum Institute, which is now able to certify the City and Guilds certificate accreditation. We have other vocational training institutes that we are endeavoring, at least other 4, to ensure that they also get accreditation, so that we don't have to bring in people from overseas to do this, because it gets very costly if we continue to do that all the time. We have, as a strategy, we have ensured that the people who are trained, they get exposure. So we've been taking our people to countries like Trinidad and Tobago. We've taken a few people to Norway. And this is yielding dividends, because many of the people, like I said, are already getting employed. Ernest talked about the National Oil and Gas Talent Register. We are requiring that any Ugandan out there who is listening and who is watching us gets to get on this register, because it spotlights, if you will, who has these competences. And this they can get through the website of Petroleum Authority of Uganda. In a nutshell, we have a good number of Ugandans who are prepared to participate through employment, in addition, of course, to SMEs that are going to be participating.
All right, that is very great. And I will come directly to Mr. Ernest Rubondo. I'll be coming back to you, PS. Looking at how government is ensuring that Ugandans and the Ugandan companies come on board, especially the fairness in getting these oil contracts, but also that the local communities are not left out. Because when we talk about oil and gas, the first thought goes to the local communities in the Albertine region.
Thank you, Mildred. Government has done quite a number of things that support the participation of Ugandans in the oil and gas sector. Since we don't have a lot of time, the structured parts or the framework parts are that the legislation requires the supply of goods and services to be given to Ugandan suppliers, everything. But as we know, the industry is new, our suppliers don't have the capacity. So it's recognized that in cases where a good cannot be supplied by a Ugandan company, the foreign company is required to work in a joint venture with a Ugandan company where that's possible. So that's the next step.
Okay.
But if that is also not possible, the supplier, the foreign supplier, needs to seek approval from the Petroleum Authority to source for an international company. And of course, the authority will review whether they have actually failed to get a Ugandan and also whether they have failed to do a joint venture. The other one, of course, the framework provides goods and services which must be provided by Ugandan companies. These are ring-fenced for Ugandan companies. So Ugandans are welcome to go for those, and things like transportation, security, foods and beverages, hotel accommodation, and so on. So that's something that has been placed in for Ugandans. Now the law also provides that when the companies are procuring, in their bid evaluation criteria, national content shall be allocated a certain percentage in the evaluation score. So you must see that the company is allocating 10% of the scoring to national content. Now the law also requires that in financial evaluation, if two bids are very close by 5%, then the Ugandan company should be able to take that. Now in addition, of course, the authority, as required by law, has established a national supply database. This is growing. In 2017, it had 513 companies. Now it has over 2,000 companies on it, the national supply database. And of these over 2,000, Ugandan companies are 1,480. Foreign companies are 597. But important to tell you that these 597 foreign companies are from 53 countries. So you can see the amount of interest that the international world has on the contracts that are coming, which are coming in Uganda. The PS has mentioned the National Oil and Gas Talent Register. So I will not really repeat that one.
Maybe just on that one, how one can get on that. What's the criteria of getting onto that National Talent Register?
It's very efficient now. The registration continues all the time. It doesn't stop. Once you get on the register, you are there for 3 years. And now your application just has to have the tax clearance of your company.
Okay.
It needs to be registered, the Uganda Registration Bureau, if you are a Ugandan company. But we also receive registration from other countries, which are verified by the embassies. And then you need to also have a social security clearance for your company so that your workers, those are the 3 things required. You just have to send an email to the NSD, go to the website of the PAU. There is a direct email which you can write to. They are very efficient. They work 24 hours a day. And so it's easy to get on the NSD. But they also hold information workshops around the country. In the districts of the pipeline, in Noya, in Hoima, in Chikube. They go there to try and get people on board. But they are constantly available for that.
And you said on the register you are there for 3 years and you have to renew?
You have to renew because companies change during that time.
Okay.
I would also like to inform our viewers that actually this aspect of contract is very important because as you are aware, the authority has to approve all the contracts before they are given out. And in 2017, we had contracts worth about $60 million. The industry started reducing in 2018. Then the contracts given were about $43 million. It reduced further in 2019. The contracts given were $21 million. And 2020 saw the lowest activity because of COVID and, of course, the lack of activity. Then we had only $13 million worth of contracts. I would like to inform viewers that given the coming in of the sector now, the growing, in the first quarter of 2021, the contracts we have seen have a value of $300 million, more than we've seen over the last years. This is an indication that business has come and it is going forward. What we have under review, which the companies have submitted for this year, are contracts of 2.8 billion United States dollars. You can see the jump in value. This is why we all have to stand up and appreciate, recognize what is coming.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's an important part. And of course, those are the things government has done to enable the people to participate. Of course, I think Eli mentioned it, government is collaborating with the private sector and over 1,700 small and medium enterprises have been trained. The Petroleum Authority is implementing a $500,000 project funded by the African Development Bank, and this project is to enhance the capacity and promote the business linkages of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises along the pipeline route, very specific along the pipeline route. So these should be able to benefit. Now, what these have brought is during the period 2017 to 2020, companies spent over $147 million, and out of these, Ugandan companies were able to get $52 million. This was spent on local entities. And there are over 1,000 local companies which have documented, which have actually got contracts in the oil and gas sector. 1,000 Ugandan enterprises. They are there and it's the beginning. And we are hoping that as it grows big, we shall have more and they'll get more value.
Okay.
Yeah. So on this aspect, initially the companies, Ugandan companies were being given or providing goods and services were in low value services. Things like catering and the accommodation and that. But now we are beginning to see Ugandan companies going into the higher level things, the engineering things. They participate in the designs as joint ventures. They participate in geological and geophysical investigations on the ground. They participate in environmental impact assessment and even in seismic surveys. This is very important for Ugandans because they are beginning to get into the higher level aspects of the oil and gas sector, and this is very beneficial.
Okay.
So I think that's what the government has done, and people are taking it up, as Eli said, and we can see an improvement, but definitely we would like to see more improvement than we are seeing now.
All right, maybe just before I go to you, Nok, you were talking about contracts, and then the thousands of Ugandan companies that are coming on board. And I know that many of them are waiting to, take advantage and grab these contracts. And many are now asking, what are some of these contracts that are coming up, that are soon to be awarded in the construction, but also what is the process of being able to take up some of these contracts?
Well, it's a very open and transparent process. All contracts are advertised. And if you have been reading the papers, I think for the last 1 or 2 months, the newspapers are awash with the contracts being advertised by the oil companies. So that's one avenue. But secondly, as an advanced aspect, the oil companies are required to hold quarterly stakeholder engagements in which they say what is coming, how much it is, and all that. Every quarter, they come and say that. And the companies on the National Supplier Database are invited to come and they listen to those stakeholders. So they hear that before it is advertised, they see it when it is advertised, and they apply to do this work. And this is extremely important, and it's happening. And you're saying that many companies are waiting, they're asking how to do it. I would also like to inform you that there are companies that are already into this business, and they are working. We have a lot of Ugandan security firms that are providing services in the field, in the camps and on the well sites. We have the houses in Kampala here. I think 1 year ago, the oil companies were occupying about 40 houses. As we speak now, these numbers are going to 200. And you know, these are high quality tenants for those who have houses. Those are things that are happening now and are already happening. And the Ugandan companies are in the field providing catering services and so on. So this has already begun. And as Dr. Karuhanga was saying, yes, they are prepared. That preparedness helped them, but they needed more preparation. So this thing is live and is already happening.
What is clear is that for those who thought that we were waiting for the 3 agreements to be signed and then wait for the process until the exploration is started, not really. The oil and gas sector is set and rolling, and if you've been sleeping, I think it's the time to wake up. Coming to you, Ms. Proskovia Nabanja, earlier on in your submissions, you mentioned about the Kibale Industrial Park, and I would like you to highlight much more on these and the ways in which Ugandan businesses can be able to partner and you know, with the more experienced companies, the partnerships that have been talked about.
Okay, thank you so much, Mildred. The Kabale Petro-based Industrial Park, like I said, is located in about 55 kilometers west of Hoima. And the main reason for setting up this industrial park is to propel industrialization using the oil and gas sector. And if you recall, Vision 2040 is really focusing on industrialization. So we believe this is one of the key projects that is really going to show that the oil and gas sector can propel industrialization, but at the same time show the linkages between the oil and gas sector and the other sectors of the economy. It's an expanse of about 30 or 29 square kilometers. And you can imagine that's almost the same size as Entebbe. And the master plan was approved by the National Fiscal Planning Board, which is good. And now what we are doing is breaking down that master plan into different packages to attract investment. So within the park, of course, we have the refinery, which will be processing the 60,000 barrels of oil per day. And we have the sector for heavy industries. We have a sector for medium to light industries. We have a sector for, you know, support facilities. But that nature of industries that are going to be situated in that industrial park, for instance, the refinery itself, we have the export hub, where the crude oil is going to be going to the refinery, then part of it going to the East African crude oil pipeline. And then currently we have the second international airport, which is at about 55% on schedule. The industries that are offshoots from the products of the refining include, you know, the petrochemicals, the fertilizer complexes, the polymers. There are those industries that are directly going to be using the products that are coming out of the refining. The refinery itself, we are projecting that it will be producing 5 product lines. You have diesel, you have petrol, you have aviation fuel, you have LPG, and you have heavy fuel oil. LPG is liquefied petroleum gas. Now, with the LPG and HFO, or heavy fuel oil, some of the components are direct inputs into the petrochemicals and the fertilizers. So there's those opportunities that will arise out of setting up the complex or the heavy industries. For the medium, of course, there are so many products that come out of refining. For the medium industries, you're looking at, you know, materials that we usually use to make dashboards in cars, flexiglass signs, boats, fiber, that sort of range. Then the light ones is where you get into textiles and the lighter industries. Okay. Then there's agro-based industries. If you've seen some of the work that is done in Kapeka Industrial Park, they're getting the fruits and freezing them using nitrogen and preparing them for export. So a similar approach can be applied within the Kabale Industrial Park. And the beauty is it has direct access to the international market through the second international airport. There will be warehousing as well. and also certification centers. Of course, the PS has talked about certification, preparing people to be able to take up these opportunities, high standards required in the oil and gas sector. So we also anticipate that there will be a zone that will be certifying the youth and any other players. So what are we doing today to prepare for those industries to commence? We are working with other government entities to open up the park in terms of the roads, terms of power, terms of water, how the sewage or waste management will be done within the park. All that is enabling environment to allow an investor to come in. Then we are also finalizing the land allocation policy, because we need to allocate the land to the industries in a more structured manner. Okay. We don't want to go wrong with that. And then we are also concluding the process of securing the joint venture partner who will come and joint venture with us in order to develop and operate that industrial park. Of course, when you look at the petrol-based industrial park, you don't forget the way, it complements the refinery. If the refinery is going to add to the GDP $3.3 billion US, and it's going to add a national capital formation in excess of $8 billion, and improve the balance of payments by about $600 million US, I think those are good numbers. And for me, I believe the Kabale Industrial Park is one of those examples that is going to show that actually oil and gas industry doesn't exist in isolation, but it actually impacts on other sectors of the economy positively.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. We'll be getting back to you. Let's go to Honorable Dr. Eli Karanga. Looking at the biggest demography of Uganda's population, the youth, and the question is about skilling, what the different, the planned interventions are, whether coming in from the private sector or the IOCs, in ensuring that the youth are given the opportunity and the skills required to be able to gain from the oil and gas sector.
Mildred, before I answer that question, I would like to challenge my sister professionally, Proscovia. I would like the joint venture partner they are looking for management of Kabale Industrial Park of 29.5 square kilometers to make sure that the joint venture is a Ugandan company. Unless you fail to get one, then you can go outside. That will make us very happy. Now, going to your question of the youth involvement and skilling, I want you to know that 70% of the jobs which are going to be required to be done in this industry are going to be for technicians, and the majority of the technicians are likely to be youth. So 70% of the people employed in this industry are likely, and I'm saying the word likely advisedly, to be the youth. This is good news, and the only way that we can have these young people in the industry is for them to be certified. Over a long time, the PS said we were sending people to Trinidad and Tobago. For a long time, Talo, when it was here, and even Aria, Hardman Resources, which discovered oil, they trained us. I was trained, I think, a youth also, by those companies. Talo sent 20 people in the universities abroad, and they came back, and now they are in UNOC, they are all over the place. So I am looking forward that the skills gap which we have is going to be at the community level, and the communities are going to be involved in this exercise. I don't think that the communities will be left out, but the youth are going to be key players. The Total and the SINOC have undertaken a lot of training and certification for the youth in different trades of businesses. For example, they, Total and Sinok, have started a pilot agriculture development program where they have trained 500 smallholder farmers who are now also, they have also trained 225 pig farmers. Sorry for my Muslim community in Ramadan. But they have trained 225 pig farmers. So if I might even break it down more to show you what they have done, Total, E&P itself, it has issued over 160 scholarships to go for students, Ugandan students who go and study abroad with master's degrees in UK and other places. They have had trainings of staff, including placement in other Total affiliates around the world, Ugandans who have been trained. Now, in the welding and training certification, there are classes. There is class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4. So welders, they start with a certificate called 3G, then they go to 4G, then they go to 6G. Now, Total has been training these up to the highest level. Heavy good vehicle drivers training and licensing have also been undertaken by Total, and they have trained quite a number of people. Throughout the year, in this quarter, the quarterly supplier development workshop, throughout the year have been carried out by Total every quarter, and I think Mr. Ernest Rivondo mentioned those quarterly meetings by these companies. Now, Sinok itself, in Bunyoro, it has carried out a training program for the youth in sheet fabrication, in welding, in electrical installation, in plumbing, in carpentry, in joinery, in bricklaying, in masonry, in hairdressing, in catering, in vehicle mechanics, and in tailoring, in Bunyoro. Now, they have also done the welding, which I talked about earlier. They have also trained drivers in heavy goods. And so I am very happy with them. As far as the Chamber of Mines is concerned itself, we have trained and certified electricians, pipe fitters, scaffolders, welders, with the support from the World Bank through Private Sector Foundation of Uganda. And the training is still going on, which is under the Chamber of Mines. We, as a chamber, have carried out quality health and safety training. We have dedicated a 4-week of 90 days, I mentioned earlier, on television to educate youth on oil and gas and in mining as well for the opportunities that the youth can access. UNDP has worked with us and developed the Youth Business Innovation Fund in partnership with the Stanbic Business Incubator Scheme. Private Sector Foundation has done a wonderful, wonderful job, and I'm very proud about what private sector has done for the youth and for skilling. We have carried out and certified workers with national and international bodies which have been mentioned by the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Robert Kasande. Well, these international certification companies, like SIT and Guilds, Directorate of Industrial Training, in Engineering Construction Industrial Training Board, ICITB, American Welding Society, Cambridge International. These are the ones which, if you have a certificate from them, it's like if you have a degree from Makerere in my days. You will be highly respected and you will easily get a job. Now, you can't get these jobs unless you have these certificates, these certifications, as the PS was saying, and Mr. Bondo. So they are giving these, and so Private Sector Foundation has ensured that they are financing these people who are called artisans, craftsmen, masonries, plumbers, welding, electricians, mechanical fitters, heavy good vehicle drivers. In fact, we have recently bought 2 vehicles which we gave to one of the members to train drivers to manage heavy goods. Now, I would like to mention some of the exciting things that PSFU has carried out. We are at Chiliandongo, Nawanyago, Kabasi, Iganga Technical Institute, Uganda Petroleum Institute in Chigumba. There we have accredited assessment centers on behalf of City and Guilds International. They are also members Oil and Gas Trainers Association of Uganda, Ogatao. In other words, all these organizations I just mentioned have formed an organization called Ogatao, for which I'm privileged to have been elected their patron. So all these associations who are involved in training are working with the PSFU to enhance this training for the youth of Uganda. As I said earlier, the Chamber of Mines has trained 120 workers and have got them certified with ICTIB, which I mentioned a little earlier, in metal fabrications, in welding, in scaffolding, in hash. Now, Safeway, Right Way has trained and certified through PSFU 170 heavy goods vehicles drivers with the East African. So these drivers can drive around East Africa waving their certificate and can be employed and work in oil and gas. Uganda Small Scale Industries Association, in partnership with MAMSA Consulting, have retrained, assessed, certified 200 craftsmen, masons, all with certifications from Cambridge International College. They are also establishing 5 assessment centers on behalf of Cambridge International College in Uganda, in central, western, and northern Uganda. Nakawa Vocational Training Institute and Nairo Vocational Training is also sponsored by Private Sector Foundation in getting accreditations on the certifications mentioned above. Muni University, in collaboration with the University of Genoa in Italy, is also sponsored by Private Sector Foundation and has already 20 students undergoing training and getting certifications. Q Training has trained 600 trainees, 9 instructors who have got certifications from Opito. This is one of the world's leading certifying companies, and others. 15 trainers have already secured permanent jobs with Total. And Maganjo Institute of Career Education, I'm pleased to say, has trained and assessed 1,200 masons and have been certified with the DIT. So the benefits the country, and these are just a few I have mentioned, the benefits the country, it is anticipated that Uganda will have the following benefits in these projects after they complete, and that's why I say we are ready. 3,830 craftsmen and artisans have been accredited in the manufacturing and construction sector with City and Guilds by Opito, also AWS, and those ones I had mentioned above. So 170 drivers have been certified as heavy goods drivers with East African Community curriculum. So these can drive vehicles, huge, funny-looking vehicles from Mombasa all the way to Hoima without a doubt, and these will be Ugandans. There are 9 public and private training institutions who have been certified in Uganda and have been accredited and assessed centers. I think the PS mentioned this. By City and Guilds. So instead of sending our students to City and Guilds London, now they can do City and Guilds in Uganda. They can do the others like ICITB, Cambridge International, which I had mentioned, one with Opito, and others. So we have 138 assessors, instructors who are certified by City and Guilds in Uganda. What I'm trying to point out is that we have a lot of support we have got from Private Sector Foundation, and now it is working in collaboration with the MasterCard Young Africa Works program, and this is very, 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 very helpful. And as you know, the Young Africa Works program with MasterCard is now the new thing at the Private Sector Foundation. The World Bank has joined us as well, support us, UNDP and others. So I would like to say I am very proud about what these organizations have done in Uganda and towards the support of youth. And so as I always hammer out for the youth, you are a very lucky generation. With all these certifications, with or without oil, you can survive.
Thank you very much, Honorable Eli Karanga. I'll be coming back to you. Our time is as well getting fast spent. But let me come to the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Kasande. The issue of land, of course, part of the land that is going to be needed for all these projects has been secured, but some is work in progress. And the question many Ugandans are looking at are the steps government is taking to ensure that there is transparency, but also fairness to the people who are going to be affected by the project.
Thank you very much, Mildred. Before I come to that question, let me just highlight one thing that Ernest talked about.
Okay.
The participation of Ugandans in this. We have a history of what we've seen, how Ugandans can participate and how much they can gain out of this. During exploration, we only spent about $3.6 billion. And we really saw Ugandan companies go away with about $900 to $1 billion of this. And that changed the economy. Now we are looking at spending anywhere between $10 to $15 billion. If we use the same ratio of 28%, we see Ugandans going away with about $4.6 billion if they participate the way we are encouraging them to participate. And when I say encourage them, there's a lot of pessimism. And people are saying, you know, once bitten, twice shy. We prepared, we did all these things, we borrowed money, and nothing happened. But then that was the exploration and appraisal phase. You are not very sure of what you are going to find. Sometimes you find and you have to stop and process the data and plan for the next phase. Now we are sure by agreeing on these agreements and agreeing to start to issue contracts, we know that for the 4 years, that money is going to be spent. So I encourage Ugandans to come out and participate. On the issue of land acquisition, we are aware of the complex land tenure systems in this country. And if we are going to have these infrastructure built, we have to do it right. And by doing it right, we make sure that all the processes of land acquisition, we first start by sensitizing the people where we want this land, explain to them the benefits they are going to get. Then we hire consultants who do a cadastral survey of these parcels, of each one's parcels. We go ahead and hire valuers who will say you have this asset on your land, you have that crop on your land, and it's valuable this much. We make sure that we get the people to understand what it is by disclosing these values, by involving the local council leadership in those areas. We get these values approved by the chief government valuer. We disclose to these. We have grievance mechanisms. If you don't agree, you can raise your grievance and it will be addressed. Many people have agreed to these compensation rates that we've given them, but we have also allowed people and say, if you are that aggrieved, there are courts of law that you can go to, and many of them have gone to courts of law. And one way or the other, these cases have been resolved. So I'm very optimistic that all this infrastructure will have the land that is required. Many of them, like the Kingfisher area and Tilenga, most of this land has already been acquired and many people have been paid, except a few in Tilenga, in the Bulisa area. We are now embarking to start compensation for those people who are along the pipeline route.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great work that is being done. And also another issue, and this I will address to the Petroleum Authority, Mr. Robondo, is the aspect of the impact of these oil developments onto the environment, because various environmentalists have talked about the threat to the ecological sensitive areas along these along the route, including the water bodies like Victoria, the wildlife reserve, and the water catchment areas. What sort of assurance would you give to Ugandans that we are safe?
Thank you. Before I get to that, I just have two clarifications. Honorable Erika Ruhanga presented the very big efforts this country has made in building the capacity of its people to enable them to participate in the sector. What I like about this effort is the extent to which the public and the private sectors have taken on this role. We must appreciate the role of the Ministry of Education in this process. It was very systematic. It undertook a workforce skills development plan which defined the exact requirements. All the implementation that is happening now is based on the recommendations of that plan. The government has now gone and evaluated that plan again because the projects are much clearer, and we expect that in 3 months' time, a new workforce skills development plan will be in place and will be much more detailed. So I think the role of the Minister of Education here needs to be really appreciated because they've worked. They've even gone to the extent of giving bursaries to people in the Albert and Graben. I just wanted also to add on to what the Permanent Secretary has said. When they talk about the people affected by the projects, it's good to appreciate the numbers we are talking about. Just for the Tilenga project, it's going to affect 5,523 people. The Kingfisher project is going to affect about 727 people. The Eco project is going to affect about 4,500 people in Uganda and another 6,000 in Tanzania. So these are the numbers that we are talking about that are going to be affected. Now, going to your question on the environment, first of all, we need to recognize that Uganda was very privileged for its oil and gas sector to come in place to start when the aspects of environment were already very well defined. Okay. There were regulatory frameworks, there were laws, the international community was aware of environment. And as a result, every single activity that has been undertaken in the oil and gas sector has undergone an environment and social impact assessment, including building a camp. That has ensured that the oil and gas sector has really followed and is following international best practice. Now, in addition to that, some things have been done specifically for the oil and gas sector, and these tools have been put in place. The government has undertaken a strategic environment assessment for the entire Albert and Graben, and this has brought out a holistic view of the issues that may arise. This assessment guides consideration of the issues in policy and plan with regard to this. The environment sensitive areas in the Graben have been mapped and are being avoided during the planning for oil and gas activities. Government has started implementing a national oil spill contingency plan, and the Petroleum Authority is leading this under the guidance of the Office of the Prime Minister. This plan establishes a framework for oil spill prevention, preparedness, and response from site level to national and even at international level. There is an environmental monitoring plan which identifies and monitors any changes which may result from this. On the institutional frameworks for oil and gas, they have also been strengthened. The laws are being enhanced to take into consideration oil and gas aspect, environmental laws. The government institutions responsible for ensuring environmental compliance have been strengthened, and most of them now have oil and gas units so that they actually feed into their usual work. The National Environment Management Authority, the Uganda Wildlife Authority have all established these units and capacity building them to try and take this work forward. So that's what has been done, and it is yielding results because all the people who visit the Albert and Graben, the first thing they say is that they are impressed about what they see in the graben, they were worried even more. The companies are also making the designs to ensure that they actually have a small footprint in the Albertine graben. So the areas they are on are fewer. But they've even gone ahead, areas where they work, for instance, when they are drilling in a place, there is a lot of activity, there is a lot of change in the area. But once the drilling is finished, there is a restoration program. It's very difficult for anybody to go and find a place in the Albertine graben and say, there was drilling here. It's all been completely restored and very efficiently.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Rondo. Our time is really getting fast spent, and yet the discussion seems to only be starting. Ms. Nabanja, a few questions as well coming through that you would respond to briefly. One is that the cost of building an oil refinery and also the cost of constructing the pipeline are somehow the same, with about $3 to $4 billion for a refinery and $3.5 billion for a pipeline. And someone is asking, why are we opting for a pipeline first and not a refinery? And then secondly, another one is asking, why can't Ugandan government construct an oil refinery instead of the saying wasting taxpayers' money on the pipeline? Because the crude oil will be sent to Tanzania for refinery, and Tanzania will tax the fuel again, and URA will also tax it too. Please take through that. Those questions briefly.
Thank you, Mildred. Interesting questions. Of course, the reason as to why the East African crude oil pipeline is important, it's really based on the volumes that we have and the need for the investors to have comfort that actually the business makes commercial sense. The ED talked about the commercialization plans for Uganda's resources, and as government, 2 commercialization plans were agreed upon: the refinery and the East African crude oil pipeline. From an investor perspective, the East African crude oil pipeline makes more sense. From value addition locally, the refinery makes more commercial sense, or makes sense, because you want to add value to the crude that you're processing. In terms of volumes, if you are going to hit the local market with 230,000 barrels of oil per day refinery capacity, our domestic consumption of petroleum products is 6 million. So 6 million liters. So if you convert 230,000, maybe to use similar numbers, 230,000 barrels is approximately 65 million liters or thereabout. So if the domestic consumption is 6 million liters per day of petroleum products, and you load the local market with 65 million liters, there would be a problem.
Well, that makes sense.
Given the regional demand could be a little bit higher, but it's still not enough to consume all that production. So the international companies had a reason to export, which is also good for us as a country, because then we start getting a marker for Uganda on the international market. It's good to see Uganda's crude hitting the international market. On the aspect of refinery in Tanzania, I don't think there is a refinery that is going to be processing Uganda's crude in Tanzania. The crude is going to be exported to the international market. White products may come back, no question about that, through Tanzania, and we always see that. And there's also white products that may come back through the usual Mombasa route. But we already have a provision for the refinery to put the white products as well on the market. The reason for this is you do not want to close off the importation of petroleum products. For example, if the refinery, for one reason or the other, was shut down, maybe for maintenance, for 7 days or 3 days or whatever hours, you had better have a corridor for bringing in petroleum products.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And to the PS, just a brief questions that you could get through briefly. When are you starting to mobilize equipment and machines for work in the oil fields? And another one is asking, what percentage of oil revenues will the indigenous Banyoro get Well, and this will cause, they're saying we should stop praising oil and gas, forgetting its negative impacts, because this main cause was just like in the Niger Delta. If you just briefly respond to those two.
When are we starting to see the graders in the oil fields? We are targeting to start this year, to start the construction. We are starting now with issuing the contracts, and therefore, again, it is important that Ugandans get to know those timelines, so that those who are prepared and those who are preparing are able to participate. Maybe before I get to the next question, I just wanted to highlight, the other day I was on a radio station and they were asking, what are those contracts that are, ring-fenced for Ugandans? I could just go through quickly those that are ring-fenced for Ugandans. Transport, security, foods and beverages supply, hotel accommodation and catering, human resource management, office supplies, fuel supplies, land surveying, cleaning, clearing and forwarding, crane hire, local available construction materials, civil works, and so forth. So these are things that we've endeavored as government to ensure that in the regulations we've ring-fenced 16 construction areas. Whether the Banyoro will have a particular percentage and how they will benefit, my thinking is that the region of the Albert and Graben, including Bunyoro and Nuoya, they're already benefiting. If you went today to cross the Nile at Para, that bridge is fantastic. Already those are benefits. The roads going from Hoima to Kaisotonya, those days we had no vehicles, we would walk those areas when we were doing exploration. The road that we're doing to go to Butiaba and Wanseko, the airport that the people of Bunyoro can use to export their products, the global market. If there is a specific percentage, the way the oil law is structured, the sharing will be with the central government, of course, first and foremost, then the local governments.
Okay.
And it is those local governments that will extend the services to the locals. But there's none specific percentage that's coming out of the oil.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much. We should be getting our close remarks because we have less than 2-3 minutes to be ending off. But I think let me start off with closing remarks. Honorable Dr. Eli Aruhanga, we should have continued with this discussion, but time is against us. What could be your closing remarks for the discussion?
Just to thank again once more my fellow panelists for enlightening Ugandans about this. Secondly, to thank His Excellency the President for what he has done for steering this ship of oil and gas to where it is now, for carrying out diplomatic, economic negotiations with the sophisticated oil companies and attracting them to come to Uganda, for always supporting the Chamber of Mines and Petroleum and private sector, for attending our conferences always, and where he can't, the Vice President, the Prime Minister are always on hand to help us to do this. I want to thank the First Lady and Minister of Education for supporting skilling and being our patron, which she accepted when we requested her to do so, for attending and opening the Sunmaker Training Institute here, run by the Chinese friends, for giving the gifts we gave to all the members of the private sector beneficiaries who have been getting grants from us, and for giving us guidance and cooperation in skilling together with the ministry, with private sector. Because you remember World Bank gave about 100 million and they gave us 20 million in private sector to use, and they stayed with 80 million for the way they have handled it and the cooperation with us. I want to thank the Minister of Finance for giving us 2 days from tomorrow. He's going to be visiting our projects. Minister of Finance, Honorable Matia Kasaija, he's going to Safeway right away tomorrow, and he will be visiting for 2 days all our projects. I want to thank the Ministry of Energy and all the related authorities involved, the past permanent secretary, the past ministers, and all those who helped to bring this project to where it is. I want to thank the Uganda Law Society for signing an agreement with private sector foundation last week to open new centers, to work with the medium and small scale industry, small scale companies, and opening 4 branches around Uganda, one in Guru, one in Mbare, one in Central, and one in Barara, where we are going to offer some pro bono services to some of the small, medium scale enterprises who cannot afford, and thank the Law Society for being there to help make sure that these contracts which are going to be given out and companies who want to team up with the joint venture companies have got a steady legal advice from lawyers, and I hope that the companies are going to use professional advisors, lawyers and others to make sure that we don't make a mistake when we team up with foreign companies. I want to thank Mr. Bondo in particular for coming up with an idea he shared with us to set up a health improvement scheme in the Grabin, in the Albertine Grabin, where our pharmacies, our health centers will be sprouted up, and I thank private sector for coming up with the initial sponsorship for our project, which I co-chair with Mr. Bondo. I am privileged again once more to participate in this, but I thank God that Uganda is where it is now. I congratulate this generation, and I just charge the young people to stop addressing wrong things and concentrate and look forward to a proud Uganda where they will have dignity. Thank God. Let's work with our neighbors as well and our foreigners, and we welcome them. I thank our parliament for passing the correct laws. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Eli Karuhanga. Great advice coming through. In less than a minute, I would like Ms. Proskovia Nabanja to give us your parting shots.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor to be on the panel, and I want to thank my fellow colleagues on the panel and thank the viewers for the fantastic questions that are coming through. Indeed, the sector has shown that actually there is commitment from both the state and the joint venture partners to invest in our industry. That shouldn't be taken lightly, based on the fact that globally there is COVID, there is low oil prices, but still there's been commitment to close out the transfer of Tullow assets to Total, the signing of all the different agreements until the 11th of this month. It gives a positive signal to the market, and it would be absurd if we do not participate. So I encourage everyone to participate in the sector so that we transform our country.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Ernest Rubondo, in less than a minute, would like to hear from your parting shots.
Thank you very much. I just want to say that what happened on the 11th of April this year is a very significant event for not only the oil and gas sector, but for the country at large. Those of us who have been in the oil and gas sector, there were milestones in the past. When the first company was licensed, that was a milestone. When they started acquiring seismic, that was a milestone. When they drilled the first well, that was a milestone. When they granted the first production licenses, that was a milestone. When government agreed on how to commercialize, that was a milestone. But the milestone on the 11th of April is bigger than all those milestones. It actually leaves one more milestone, the production of oil in Uganda, which is now slated for the beginning of 2025. And that's not a statement that is being made by government, it's a statement being made by the oil companies. Okay. Secondly, I would like to thank all the institutions that have supported the Petroleum Authority of Uganda, including our leaders. I would like to thank the staff, because all the things I've said which Petroleum Authority has done has really been as a result of the support of the board and the staff of the Petroleum Authority. We are grateful. We enjoy a lot of support and cooperation with many institutions. We don't take it for granted. It's very good. I thank my panelists. I thank you, NBS, for having organized this. But finally, if you forget everything that has been said today, please never say that anything is going to start when oil comes out of the ground. Things have begun
already,
and the benefit is now. If there is anything you say that is waiting for the first production of oil at the beginning of 2025, the train has left you. Thank you.
Better late than never, Mr. Rubondo. And finally, to the PS, two key questions that I'd like you to answer as we end off. One is asking what plans have been made to ensure maximum accountability from the oil sector to the public? And also, as you give your closing remarks, what assurances do you give to Ugandans that there won't be an oil curse, but just a blessing?
Those are good questions. The significance of what we did on Sunday, or 11th, is very critical, because the volumes of oil that we're talking about producing, about 1.7 billion barrels, may not all support and supply the infrastructure that we've talked about, the pipeline and the refinery. So for us, we think one is that we have de-risked the Albert and Graben and those other areas that are not yet licensed. It's very important that we realize that. How are we ensuring that we are avoiding the curse? We've been very transparent. Recently, we joined the Extractives Industries Transparent Initiative that will help us to be transparent. We've worked with the Ministry of Finance under the Public Finance and Management Act of 2015 to create a petroleum fund that will ensure that all the revenues that come into the sector are put in that fund and they are appropriated through Parliament. We think that ensuring that we are utilizing this money to build infrastructure will help Ugandans. For instance, if I'm in agriculture in Soroti, for instance, I will not move to the Albert and Graben to create what we call the oil curse or the Dutch disease. We will be supporting Ugandans wherever they are in their industries, in their regions. And to me, that will ensure that we avoid the oil curse. I'd like to end by thanking my fellow panelists for articulating the issues. I would like to thank NBS for giving us the platform, and Spotlight Uganda for ensuring that these engagements are held and Ugandans get the information that is required, because that's the only way we can start now to involve Ugandans and Ugandans realize that the things that we are doing are for real. Thank you very much, all our sister institutions, all our leaders for giving us the opportunity to participate in these engagements and ensuring that this oil will come out, hopefully in the next 4 years. Thank you very much.
Hopefully so. Thank you very much, Mr. Robert Kasande, the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. Thank you to the Executive Director, Petroleum Authority of Uganda, Mr. Ernest Rubondo. To you, Ms. Proscovia Nabanja, the Chief Executive Officer, Uganda National Oil Company. And to Honorable Dr. Eli Karuhanga, the Council Chairman, Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum, and for all our viewers joining us and sticking to this discussion. Like Mr. Rubondo said, we do not wait for the production. The ball has been set rolling and the train has probably left. But like it is said, better late than never. I want to say thank you so much all for joining us. The discussion continues on the hashtag SpotLightUG. Thank you to the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance for ensuring that this comes to pass, for powering us, to UBC Television and NBS Television. It is a great pleasure. It is currently the 20th of April, 2021, and I want to say good morning.
SpotLightUG.
Winston Churchill named it the Pearl of Africa. Uganda is probably one of the most gifted countries in the world. The people, the food, the love, the climate, the culture, the scenery, and the peace and tranquility. Join us as we take you through the journey. The journey, live and exclusive to UBC, your public broadcaster, inspiring Uganda.
Was and even remains to this day.
Clearly, the Castro regime will not change by its own choice. But Cuba must change.
I don't care how I die, but rest assured, if they invade us, I'll die in combat.
You don't make friends with Uncle Sam by overthrowing a dictatorship ruled by his appointee, or by building a socialist state right in his backyard. Fidel Castro did both. His relations with the US started with a trade war, escalated into a naval blockade of the island, and climaxed with something that had the world staring into the abyss of a nuclear apocalypse during the Cuban Missile Crisis. An island nation smaller than the size of Florida found itself squeezed between two superpowers in the thick of what almost became an all-out atomic war.
It shall be the policy of this nation to regard any nuclear missile launched from Cuba against any nation in the Western Hemisphere as an attack by the Soviet Union on the United States.
Things eased up a little since then, of course. The US is a very different country. The Soviet Union hasn't existed for nearly 3 decades. But Cuba remains the same, along with its ever so poor relations with the US.
We will not lift sanctions on the Cuban regime. We will enforce the embargo.
We reaffirm today that any strategy that seeks to destroy the revolution, either through coercion and pressure or by using subtle methods, will fail.
The troika of tyranny in this hemisphere